And so I put an ad in a sweet shop window that cost 50p, which I stole from my mum's purse, and put it out there really for a guitarist to join a band. And my whole life has been defined by that one advert.
Have you heard that story about apparently they did a gig in Mexico City once, and it triggered 2 earthquakes?
I can imagine. And that was probably before they went on stage. It was probably in the bar.
Virgin Radio 80s Plus.
Chris Difford, hello, welcome along to Virgin Radio and Virgin Radio 80s Plus. How are you?
Well, I'm great, and I'm very pleased to be here. Thank you for having me.
Because out of all the guests, we were just talking about this a moment ago, it's taken so long for us to find a time when we could both do this, and because you've been touring, haven't you? It's all been going on.
I've been touring, and I've been doing my own podcasting, and that's been very good. I really love that. It's a great opportunity for me to talk to other songwriters about their lives and find out things that I didn't know.
You are, my goodness, you are one of the greatest songwriters out there that we've certainly ever had on here. I've got so many questions for you. Was it, with that in mind, was it difficult to come up with this set list, with these songs?
Well, pinned into these years, no, it wasn't hard really. But what I wanted to do was have a thread to the different songs, so that they meant something to me. I guess that was the most important thing, and I could say something about them.
Every one of these songs, they're massive. If we could, we should play all of them. We're going to start with Bowie, which is at the top of your list. Yeah. Tell me the song that you've picked.
Well, I've picked Let's Dance, but I first saw David Bowie in 1972 in Eltham College, and he came on stage, very thin, sort of stark-looking guy with a blue acoustic guitar, and played some of the most incredible songs. And I just thought, wow, I wish I could do that. And it was a very big inspiration for me to pick up the pen and start writing lyrics.
So he inspired you, did he, from kind of early on?
I'd been inspired by being useless at everything else at school apart from writing poetry. So
really?
But he was the first sort of live act that I saw, and I thought, this looks like a pretty good job. I could either work at the biscuit factory in Bermondsey, or I could be on stage, and I thought that might be the better option.
And what was he like back then when you saw him for the first time?
He was confident, and he picked songs that that I'd never heard of, apart from the ones that he played that were his own. So yeah, it was just a really interesting show. And I remember walking home with a bag of fish and chips from Eltham College to my council estate in South London with my mate Andy, and we were just talking about how great it was, and we wanted to go to more gigs, and why don't we form a band? That's how it all began.
Wow. And why Let's Dance? Why this song, this particular one?
Well, Let's Dance has got an infectious rhythm to it, and if I'm right, it was recorded in Switzerland, and the guitar riff on it is just killer. And I remember in the 80s being in clubs in New York, like the Limelight Club, and you'd walk in, they put this on, and instantly you'd be on the dance floor making a fool of yourself, and it was just brilliant.
Would you class this track as a game changer, like as in it set a new kind of mould for other tracks to come?
Well, I think it was one of the game changers. Yeah, I think Bowie was one of those people who could, he could just turn his hand at any style, really, and I think people would then follow. There are very few artists that can do that anymore.
Brilliant. Your next song on the list is... Oh, I love this. We're going Mark Allman. Tell me which one you've picked.
I've picked Tainted Love, and the reason Soft Cell and the reason Mark... Because I love him. I think he's an incredible person. He's so much fun to be around. And I run every other year a thing called Songs in the Key of London, which is a concert usually at the Barbican. And all the songs are curated by myself, and I have like 20 guests. And this last year, Mark came along, and we sang a duet, which was extraordinary. It was just really, really good.
What did you sing? Tell me.
We sang West End Girls.
Oh, okay, the Pet Shop Boys.
Pet Shop Boys.
Wow.
Yeah, so I did the rap and he did the high bits. And it was just lovely to share a stage with somebody so enthusiastic. He didn't feel confident doing it, but I did. I just felt this is going to be fun, and it was.
And looking back on, his image back at the early part of the 80s, he was pretty out there, wasn't he? He was...
Well, he was, and he was really, if you take a leaf out of David Bowie's book, he was in a similar category because he could play those Jacques Brel songs. In fact, played at the Albert Hall and just did a whole night of Jacques Brel songs. And, the burlesque and the sort of wayward kind of way that Mark can be is just perfect.
Mm. And what's he like now? Has he still got that kind of, that fire to perform? He's still out there, isn't he, touring and stuff?
Mark's got an incredible love for touring and love for writing and being who he is, and I think that's amazing.
And don't you think it's interesting to ask you, because a real muser, this is such a great example of how to do a cover version, this, isn't it? Because very few people know that it was originally by Gloria Jones years and years ago. They made their mark with this track, didn't they?
Yeah, and a lot of people, including me, thought it was his at the beginning. But it's very difficult to do cover versions in an inventive way.
Brilliant. Now, talking of which, we should do a double play with these two, Harry, because you mentioned a moment ago, Chris, that you covered this next song on your list, Pet Shop Boys, West End Girls. There's so much to say about this song. It just kind of sums up that part of the 80s when it was released, isn't it? It's a mood in its own.
Yeah, the Pet Shop Boys are an opera within themselves, really. I love them very much, and the only time I've really come close to knowing them, they came to record at my house and when I had a studio. And what was really exotic about it was I would be sitting in the garden in a deck chair and I would hear them singing and playing, and it could only be them because they have their own unique sound. And they would always take a break in the afternoon for tea and scones, and I thought, that's the kind of band I want to be in.
That's brilliant. What is it about them, their unique sound? Is it purely down to his voice?
I think it's purely down to his voice and the simplicity and the fact that they hit a chorus after 45 seconds. And I think that's all grist to the mill. And, I would love to be in a band that can deliver that kind of style. I think it's passionate and it's a vibe. And when they go on tour, they really think about it. I mean, every show that they do, the brilliant choreography, the lighting, everything is thought through to a T.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned a moment ago that you did a cover of this song, yeah? I
did a cover of this song with Mark Harmond at my show at the Barbican last year.
Can we find that? Is that online anywhere? I'd love to hear it.
I would hope it would be online, but I don't know. Maybe we should cut it again.
We should, yeah, absolutely. It sounds amazing. Okay, quick question for you then. So you've been writing songs for something like 40 years, if I'm correct.
50
years, 10 years out. Am I right in thinking, and I read this, that it all started off pretty much when you stole a 50 pence piece from your mum's purse and you placed an advert in a news? This is what I read. Am I right in thinking that?
It's pretty true, yeah. I mean, I sort of cast myself as a singer-songwriter and sat in my bed writing songs, and I thought, well, actually, it'd be nice to have a band. There's something about that I really wanted to. I wanted a gang because I'd been in a gang. I'd been in a skinhead gang growing up. Being in a gang was like, the most important thing. So the next best thing is to have a band. And so I put an ad in a sweet shop window that cost 50p, which I stole from my mum's purse, and put it out there, really, for a guitarist to join a band. And, my whole life has been defined by that one advert.
And you say that you knew that you had something going on with poetry at school.
Yeah.
Because you said that was the thing that gave you enjoyment, that you liked at school.
Well, yeah, I liked and I still like finding my own space and going off to create. It's not good sometimes for people who live around me because they think I'm just being quiet. But I'm not. I'm finding inspiration, and in inspiration there is a security for me. And it's a safe place. And in fact, when I write my Instagram post pretty much every day, it takes me to that safe place that I used to be when I was sort of 16 years old. It's very important.
Yeah. Can I ask a huge question? It's probably a very unfair question, but out of all the songs you've written, have you got one that you're most proud of?
Well, yeah, I guess Up the Junction would be one because people love it so much. I've learnt to sing it over the years, which is challenging, but I enjoy singing it. And, it's a very crafty song. It's got a beautiful melody, and lyrically, I'm very proud of it.
Joe Jackson, the next song on your list. Whenever I hear this song, it takes me to New York City. I think it's obviously the video. I don't
Me
know.
too.
You've lived in New York. Tell me about this song.
Well, the only time I've met Joe was in New York City, funnily enough. He was doing a show, and I got in contact with him. I don't know how in those days without mobile phones. But after the show, he invited me to go for a Mexican meal with him. And we had a really nice night. And, he used to live in South London too. And I think around that time, a lot of his lyrics were didn't really get the sort of the just desserts, I think. I think he's an amazing writer, and I'm glad to see just recently he's still out on tour.
Oh, he's still out there, is he? Still doing his thing?
Yeah, he's got a book. He's doing all of that stuff. But I've always really liked Joe, and he's one of those sort of characters that sort of disappears and then comes back stronger.
As far as, you were saying he was a South East London guy, and you very much grew up in, we spoke about this earlier, Greenwich, Deptford, an area that I really know well. Yeah. Would you say that was important to the start of your life? Because it's a very kind of salt of earth area, isn't it? The people you meet, the experiences you have, the cross-section, multicultural.
Well, it was. When I was growing up, in the foggy days of London, it was very much like that, and it was very working class, and down our street, pretty much everybody had a job, and they all worked hard for it. And it's changed now, of course, because if I was to try and buy somewhere in Deptford, it would probably cost me a couple of million, which of course, obviously I don't have, but.
It's being so gentrified, isn't it?
It's so gentrified. There's posh restaurants in Deptford High Street, for God's sake,
Yeah.
But there's still a mixture of cultures, and that's the most important thing. And Deptford, in history, is a really important place as well. It's where the Navy first was built by Henry VIII. It's where, it's just a very interesting historical place.
And you're very, very well known there, and people kind of say, you're like a boy done good.
Well, I would say that might be true, yeah. And then a lot of boys and kids on my estate, when they were growing up, they all wanted to live in Kent. They wanted, if you'd done well as a builder or a brickie, you bought a house in Kent. And I did a similar thing. I moved out to Kent, and I've been in the country ever since, apart from a couple of years when I lived in central London.
Your next song, here's a song that won, I think, the Best Song Award at the 83 Ivor Novello Awards. This Madness song. Why have you picked this one?
Because they're great blokes. I love them to death. We Squeeze toured with them last year, and what fun. They were unpredictably brilliant. They were on stage every night giving it all. Their audience took us under their wing, which was lovely, and they write fantastic songs. I think something like Our House is just brilliant, and the production of this, Clive Langer, Alan Wynne, Stanley, in their day they were producing some of the best records. They may have even produced Let's Dance. They hadn't produced Let's Dance. Sorry, they had worked with David Bowie on Absolute Beginners.
Right.
So they were very, very smart, smart lads.
And this song, another one of those songs that really represents life in the UK.
Yeah.
The fact that there were packed houses, and back then when this song was coming out, everyone was kind of struggling financially. A bit like how we're doing now, really, isn't it?
Exactly,
but it's a snapshot of the UK. What makes a song as good as this, as far as songwriting's concerned?
Whoever's delivering it, the vocalist has got to be strong. Somebody who delivers the song, you've got to be able to know the lyric and be able to be passionate about how you tell that tale. And the thing about Our House as a musical, that hit the stage for a while. It was big in London, but it didn't transfer to places like LA, as you would expect.
Why was that? Because it was too British, or
it was too Camden Town. But nevertheless, they got a chance to get it on stage, and hats off to them.
Yeah, and they're still going strong, aren't they?
They are. I mean, it's they're one of those bands that just manages to get in a rehearsal room and write songs and get out there on the road and have their day.
Have you heard that story about apparently they did a gig in Mexico City once, and it triggered 2 earthquakes?
I can imagine. And that was probably before they went on stage. It was probably in the bar.
Exactly. That's the kind of legacy, rock and roll legacy you want, isn't it?
XTC were a band that I saw at the Nashville Rooms in London, and I thought, well, these are weird blokes. Their music was complicated. Lyrically, it was very, very strong. They were nerdy looking, but unique, and I think that's what attracted me to them. And I know from listening to their albums how smart they are musically, and it's a shame they're not bouncing around anymore. But
what happened to them? Are they not around? Are they?
No, I think they had. Like all bands, there's disagreements about things within the context of the band, and not all bands can stay together for a long time. There's always going to, the thing about being in a band is it's like when you're 16, 17, you all get in the canoe together and row in the same direction, and then somebody drops an oar and you go around in circles for a few years, and then that's the end of the career.
Yeah.
So that is one of those things. But when you listen back to their records, they're unique and they're brilliant.
And tell me, it's interesting you mentioned that within Squeeze there have been so many changes over the years, haven't there? Does that pretty much sum up the Squeeze experience over the years?
Well, I think musically we've evolved here and there throughout the years and had different lineups because people left or people got tired of being in the band, those kinds of things. When Jules left, it was a big pair of shoes to fill, of course. Paul Carrack came along, he filled those shoes, and then when he left, it was very difficult to fill those shoes. And we've had various bass players down the years and various keyboard players, and they've all been great. Without them, I wouldn't be here. So I've got a lot of respect for all the people that have played in Squeeze. It's quite a family tree.
Yes, yeah, and so well loved. I mean, the reaction you got just walking through our office, people stopping you saying, you're amazing, I've seen you live, and
lovely, yeah.
That must be a great thing.
Well, it is, and I'm very proud of that. I'm very lucky, and it's sometimes you have to really refocus yourself and say, well, actually, this is what my life has been about, really.
Yeah. And if I was to put you on the spot, and this is very naughty of me, because it's not on the list, but if I gave you the option of like Up the Junction, Call for Cats, I mean, they're 2 of the biggest, most loved tracks. Which one would you say I should play on your behalf? That's kind of me, isn't it?
That is kind of you. I think I'd still go for Up the Junction. Call for Cats is kind of... It's like an old jacket. It sort of hangs in my wardrobe, and I get it out every night and sing it. But it never feels quite as fresh as Up the Junction to me. I think it's a fantastic song on it, and it got us from A to B.
Tell me about Up the Junction. What was the inspiration? So you wrote the song, didn't you? Can you remember where you were when you wrote it and how long it took?
Yeah, I mean, we were on a tour in America, and I was writing the lyrics in those days, and what I was doing was watching my laundry go around in a laundromat in New Orleans, and I was bored, and I really wanted to be at home. We'd been on tour for far too long, which is always the case, and I just started writing this story about people that lived in Clapham. I'd never even been to Clapham, and
really,
and I gave Glenn the lyric, and he wrote the music and produced it, and there you go.
And did you know that we've got something here? This could...
No, I didn't. I enjoyed our manager's response at the time. He said it'll never be a hit because it doesn't have a chorus, and that's what I enjoyed most about it, because he was against it. But luckily, Derek Green at our record company in those days, A&M, decided that he was wrong and that we should put it out, and that's when it became a hit.
And Chris, I'm dying to ask you, what makes a song? There's very few of them, but there's, there's songs that have managed to stand the test of time. Almost songs that are both retro and futuristic at exactly the same time. Do you know what I mean? And I would say this is kind of one. Like, you can't quite place where it could be released now.
Yeah.
What makes a song that special?
I think the simplicity of the production, really. I think if you listen to some Duran Duran tracks, Spandau Ballet tracks that were recorded in the 90s possibly, they're sort of, they're steeped in the history of the production of time. And whenever you put them on the radio, that's what they take you back to. Whereas I think something like Up the Junction, and there are many others, where the production isn't quite as grand, there's a sort of folk element to it in some ways, and I think that's what carries it forward.
This has been brilliant. We're down to the last song on the list. We've been rattling through these. What a song to end with. Please tell me what you've picked.
Well, The Pretenders I'm a huge fan of. I think Chrissy Hynde is just a genius. And Brass in Pocket is one of my favourite songs. And the production of this song, for instance, it stands out to me because the voice is right in the middle of the mix. It's the loudest thing, and so it should be. And that's what attracts you to the radio to listen to it. It just sounds gorgeous.
Have you worked with her?
No, sadly I haven't. She's we did a show with her in Liverpool, and it was nice to watch at the side of the stage. I've watched her play a couple of times, and I like the passion that she has and the dedication and commitment that she has to being Chrissy Hynde. And you know, when I watched the tribute, the Foo Fighters tribute, when she came on and sang, I was in tears. I just thought that was amazing.
It's just incredible legacy as well.
Incredible.
Recently, you know, with the Sex Pistols element at the start and stuff, she's been there, she's done it, she's survived it, she's got the stories to tell. It's quite incredible, isn't it?
Yeah, that's what I like.
But as you have, and thank you so much for coming in this week. Obviously, you're still at it. What's the plan for the rest of the year? You going back on tour? You still writing songs? Tell me about an average, day in your life.
Well, I've got more podcasts to record.
So tell us about the podcast. What's it called?
It's I never thought it would happen. I run my podcast for a charity called Help Musicians, and last week Kevin Rowland had Andrew Lloyd Webber, I've had Sting, I've had so many different great people on it. I'm hoping to get a radio show out of it, because it's really good songwriters talking to other writers. It's a different take. And then I'm doing my stand-up show at the Edinburgh Festival for 2 weeks, which I'm really looking forward to. And in the meantime, Squeeze have got 12 festivals over the summer. And then it looks like we're going to America for about 4 or 5 weeks, but we'll wait and see.
It's a great life, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's a life, and because I put that ad in the sweet shop window here
in South East London, it's amazing.
South East London.
That 50p went a long way, didn't it?
It did. It produced 4 kids and 3 marriages and God knows what.
Chris, it's been wonderful spending this week with you. Thank you so much for coming in. I'm so glad that we managed to kind of finally sort it. Have you had fun?
Oh, very much. Thank you.
Please come back in. Please come back in. It'd be great to see you with the rest of the guys performing again with Chris on the Breakfast Show, so we should try and make that happen at some point. All right, thank you, Chris.
Thank you for having me. Bye-bye.